Thanks indeed for staying with us here on the News at 1. It's time to track business stories now. We begin with the World Bank, where the World Bank Group says the estimated per capita income growth of 0.7% for Nigeria and the rest of sub-Saharan Africa in 2022 is insufficient to eradicate poverty. According to its latest reports on the continent, that issues shaping Africa's economic future, poverty reduction trends, which were already derailed by the COVID-19 pandemic, had slowed further. It also adds that the pandemic has induced a lasting impact on long-term growth, affecting particularly the poorest people and increasing extreme poverty in the region. The Washington-based bank also said the rising inflation weighing on economic activities in Nigeria, and its upward trend has been worsened by the war in Ukraine. However, the World Bank noted that there is no fiscal space for effective responses due to high levels of debt across sub-Saharan African countries, rising borrowing costs, and depleted public savings. Away from that report, a special joint arrangement by key industry players in Nigeria's oil and gas industry will lead to massive supplies of premium motor spirit, popularly called petrol, in Lagos, Calabar, Port Harcourt and Ogara in January. The move is part of the arrangement by the government, Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, and the 30,000-member independent petroleum marketers in the fuel supply chain to find a permanent solution to the lingering fuel scarcity in the country. As 4 major fuel supply points from where the products would be moved to other parts of the country, it is believed that the arrangement is to boost fuel supply across Nigeria and probably put an end to the persistent fuel queues emerging across the country. Meanwhile, the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry (LCCI) is warning that the planned supplementary budget by the federal government will cause economic shocks in the coming year, that's 2023. According to the Director General, Mrs. Chinyere Almona, the supplementary budget, if approved, will raise the budget deficit for 2022 from 10.78 trillion naira to 11 out credits to the private sector, increasing the cost of debt servicing and making the economy more vulnerable to unforeseeable shocks in an election year. To other stories now. History was made here in Lagos on last week as the Lagos State Governor, Mr. Babajide Sanwo-Olu, formally stepped into the coach of the newly completed Lagos Blue Line and took the first trip aboard the electric-powered rail infrastructure. And speaking on our flagship business program, the public affairs analyst, Mr. Bolao Olajide, highlighted the operations of the newly completed Phase 1 of the project, believes the Blue Line rail will ease traffic congestion in the state. Mr. Bolao also calls on residents of the state to support government by not destroying the electric-powered rail infrastructure, which will commence passenger operations in January 2023.
At the conceptual stage for this project, the government knew it would need a dedicated power. You're not going to power this on NEPA. Definitely. So there's a dedicated IPP, independent power project, for this, for the rail. So the issue of epileptic power supply, this and that, does not happen. Those kind of power sources will also even have inbuilt issues that can handle redundancy and all the rest. So it is believed that this kind of a project will run once it starts to run, because of the dedicated power source that has been put in place. By the next quarter, this will happen. The passengers should start running on it. So after you finish construction, you need to do testing. So you put the rail there, you ride it, you look at what are the hitches, are there some bolts I need to tighten, are there T's I need to cross, I's I need to dot. So there's a testing period. After the testing period, then you go live with passengers. So all these, construction is the main thing. Once construction is completed, the testing phase should not be anything that will be unduly elongated. So it is reasonable to believe that that first quarter next year, this train will actually open to passengers.
Well, let's turn attention now to global business stories as Toyota Motor Corp global vehicle output has hit over 833 vehicles, a 1.5% increase in November. According to the yearly report, domestic production slid 3.3% to 266 174 vehicles, while overseas output rose by 3.8% for the month, 9.7 million autos, but was forced to lower the target in November as it struggles with rising cost of materials and a shortage of semiconductors. And global sales and production in the month of November exceeded last year's levels due to solid demand, particularly in North America, while recovery in parts supply that has been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic causes slowdowns. Meanwhile, the automaker projects a production of 700,000 vehicles by January 2023. The Russian ruble edged higher against the dollar today, recovering from its largest weekly slump. Well, the ruble lost about 8% last week and 12.5% down this month after the oil embargo and price cap came into force. The finance ministry said the recent decline was related to recovering imports. However, the Russian currency was able to strengthen local liabilities. Well, let's stay with Russia, where Moscow is now ready to resume gas supplies to Europe through the Yamal-Europe pipeline. That's according to the Russian Deputy Prime Minister, Mr. Alexander Novak. The Yamal-Europe pipeline, which flows westward but has been mostly reversed since December of 2021 due to political reasons. Mr. Novak is noting that the European market remains relevant as the gas shortage persists and there are opportunities to resume supply, while Warsaw Agreement with Russia was terminated after rejecting Moscow's demand to pay in rubles. Let's wrap things off now as crude oil prices remain unchanged today as most markets were closed for holidays due to Christmas and New Year celebrations. The Brent crude futures is settled at $83.92 a barrel, up by 3.6%, while U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude settled at $79.56 per barrel, a 2.7%, which is the biggest weekly gain since October. Meanwhile, according to Algerian President Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, the country has now set a reference price for crude oil at $60 a barrel through 2023 to 2025. The country's budget also sets the market price for crude oil at $70 a barrel during the same period. Well, that's a wrap on the business desk at this time. Thanks for watching. Sports News is next. Good afternoon.